Ground 2 for EMER equipment light teardown.
Go ahead, Johnny.
Yes, just letting you know this activity is complete. Everything that was in PMA2 in the stow note is confirmed to now be in Node 2. And the only delta.
Station Houston on 2 for Johnny. Sorry, I walked you right into a handover there. So we heard that there was a Delta, and we're ready to copy.
Yes, no worries. Just letting you, it was more of a USA, but the only Delta was row 5 in the stow note, the ammonia cartridge bag, serial number 1019. I did verify with the correct barcode. That item was already in Node 2. So I confirm everything in the stow note is now in Node 2.
Copy, Johnny. Thanks for the update, and that's a good config.
Station Tsukuba on Space Ground 2 for Kimia.
Go ahead, Tontu.
Good afternoon, and we have a favor of you related to Earth order change.
Okay, I'm going to call you back a little bit later. Please. I'm going to call you back a little bit later because of the departure. Yeah, thank you.
Copy that. Thank you.
Houston Station on 2, Node 2 camcorder 1 is on, so you guys are welcome on board.
Copy, thanks.
You are looking live at a view of the SpaceX Dragon Endurance, currently mated to the forward port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station as the vehicle flies 262 miles from northwest to southeast over the Atlantic Ocean off the east coast of the United States. Good afternoon from Mission Control in Houston and the International Space Station Flight Control Room as 4 crew members who have spent almost 5 months aboard the orbital outpost begin the journey home, heading for a splashdown off the coast of California on Saturday morning to wrap up a 148-day, 62.7 million-mile mission. Welcome to our coverage of the departure and hatch closure of the Crew 10 crew from the International Space Station.
Go ahead on 2, Tuck.
Hey Tess, we have been trying to call SpaceX on both Big Loop as well as drone DG1, but no response. Also, did you guys hear us?
And Tuck, yes, we heard you. We do not currently have TDRS Direct on Dragon, so our return calls did not make it up to you.
Okay, so can you guys relay the information to SpaceX? So step 2.9 is complete. Dragon cabin config for departure is complete. And also we are looking for go for step 3.1 and also checking the LIO config in step 3.4.
Checking.
Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi, who spent some time as the commander of the International Space Station up until a few days ago.
We have you loud and clear now too, thank you. And SpaceX Dragon, come check.
The conversation you've been hearing, part of the closure preparations.
Currently is not on Space to Ground 2 directly. We're working the config on the ground to get you comm.
You heard the voice of spacecraft communicator Tess Caswell here in Mission Control.
We have seats 2 and 3 suited and in seats 1 and 4 working on steps 2 and 3, or correction 3 of 2.103.
And that was the voice of Dragon Commander, Crew 10 Commander Anne McLean of NASA, as she and her 3 crewmates begin to put themselves in their seats in the SpaceX Dragon vehicle, named Endurance, and begin the process of suiting up for hatch closure and the undocking of Dragon from the forward port of Harmony that is scheduled later this afternoon at 5:05 p.m. Central Time, 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time. You're looking at part of the complement of the Expedition 73 crew that will be left behind once Endurance departs, with the undocking scheduled about 2 hours and 15 minutes from now. Again, the 4 departing crew members, Anne McLean and Nicole Ayers of NASA, Takuya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov. They launched aboard their Dragon vehicle on a Falcon 9 rocket on March 14th, arrived at the International Space Station the following day, and at the time of splashdown that is scheduled for 10:33 a.m. Central Time, 11:33 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday morning, Crew 10 will have completed 148 days in space, 146 of them aboard the station, a journey of 2,368 orbits of the Earth, and 62.7 million miles. Anne McLean's 148 days in space upon splashdown tomorrow will have totaled 352 days in space on her 2 flights. Nicole Ayers, of course, in her first flight, 148 days. Takuya Onishi, with his 148 days in space upon his return to Earth tomorrow, will have logged 263 days in space on a pair of flights. And this, the first flight for Kirill Peskov. He will have logged 148 days in space. The crew saw a total of 5 arriving vehicles and the departure of 6 visiting vehicles.
SpaceX Dragon has you loud and clear. Great to talk to you today.
And great to hear your voice. Sorry for the delay there. Capcom is about to relay up a call, but captured all of your words, and you are go for 3.1 for LIO config, IMV teardown, hatch closure, and suit donning. We're going to be swapping to cartridge number 4 today.
Copy. Go in step 3, cartridge number 4.
And that conversation between the core Crew Operations Resource Engineer, basically the SpaceX Capcom or communicator, and Anne McLean aboard Dragon, as she indicates that the crew members are inside Dragon. They will swap out lithium oxide canisters that are used for the scrubbing of the air to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere on board the Dragon during its free flight away from the International Space Station. This will be basically a 17.5-hour transit of phasing away from the station following undocking later today. And until that conversation between the core, the Crew Operations Resource Engineer, basically the SpaceX Capcom or communicator, and Anne McLean aboard Dragon, as she indicates that the crew members are inside Dragon. They will swap out lithium oxide canisters that are used for the scrubbing of the air to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere on board the Dragon during its free flight away from the International Space Station. This will be basically a 17.5-hour transit of phasing away from the station following undocking later today until the time of the deorbit burn for Dragon that is scheduled for Saturday morning at 9:39 and 47 seconds a.m. Central Time, 10:39 and 47 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. The remaining crew that will be left on board the station to continue the unbroken presence of humans aboard the International Outpost, which will reach its 25th anniversary on November 2nd this year, is comprised of the new station commander, Sergei Ryzhikov, his Roscosmos colleagues, Alexei Zabritsky and Oleg Platonov, NASA astronauts Johnny Kim, Zena Cardman, and Mike Fink, and Kimiya Yui of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Ryzhikov, Zabritsky, and Kim launched back in September on the Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Cardman, Fink, Platonov, and Yui launched just 8 days ago aboard the SpaceX Dragon Endeavour, arriving at the International Space Station to begin their tour of duty on board the orbital outpost. A good view once again from external cameras on the International Space Station of the docking interface between the forward port of Endurance on the left and the pressurized mating adapter on the forward end of the Harmony module and the U.S. segment of the International Space Station. The cone-shaped object at the top of your screen is the nose cap on the Dragon itself, which will be closed prior to Dragon's re-entry back into the Earth's atmosphere on Saturday. After waving off the undocking of Dragon because of weather conditions off the coast of California, a final weather briefing was conducted this morning by NASA and SpaceX managers. The weather conditions were carefully evaluated and determined that winds at the splashdown site off the coast of California are and will be within limits tomorrow morning.
SpaceX Dragon on big loop for LIO.
Go ahead, Dragon. We're with you on the big loop.
Hey, LIO cartridge number 4 has been installed in an active slot at GMT 1955.
We copy. LIO cartridge 4 installed in active slot at 1955.
And once again, Takuya Onishi confirming with SpaceX flight controllers in Hawthorne that the air scrubbing canisters have been installed aboard Dragon to help with the scrubbing out of carbon dioxide during Endurance's free flight away from the station through the time of entry and splashdown on Saturday morning. The countdown clocks here in Mission Control are counting towards the command that will be issued 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 30 seconds from now for the retraction of an umbilical that is basically a power and telemetry cable that has provided power to Endurance during its 5 months attached to the forward port of the International Space Station. Once that umbilical retracts, the command that will previously be issued begins the opening of 2 sets of hooks, 6 hooks for each set, that have held Endurance firmly in place to the forward port on pressurized mating adapter number 2 on the forward end of the Harmony module. Once those hooks are opened later today, there will be the first of 2 undocking burns, as they are called. The first for 1.5 seconds to begin the physical separation of Endurance from the International Space Station. The second burn of 5 seconds in duration will accelerate that opening rate and lead to the beginning of 4 so-called departure burns, which will increase the phasing away from the station for Endurance to a safe distance for the deorbit burn that is scheduled for Saturday morning. Earlier this week, the departing Crew 10 crew members, led by Commander Ann McClain, had a few moments to share their thoughts with the Expedition 73 crew members that they were part of and continue to be part of until they undock later this afternoon. That all led into a change of command ceremony in which Takuya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency handed over station command to Sergei Ryzhikov of Roscosmos. McClain's comments were particularly poignant. Let's take a moment as we replay her comments this past Tuesday as the Crew 10 began preparations to begin their trip home.
And as we complete our mission on Space Station, we really want to lead with gratitude for the absolute privilege of getting to live and work aboard this amazing International Space Station. All of us are keenly aware that we may never get to do this again, and we've been very pensive over the last days of understanding what we have all got to be a part of. And we know that there's some tumultuous times on Earth, and there's some people that are going through struggles all around, and we want this mission, our mission, to be a reminder of what people can do when we work together, when we explore together. The foundations of this mission were laid long before any of us got here. This is a short snapshot in time today in our mission. But the International Space Station, this international mission that has been going on for almost 25 years, was made possible by visionaries who years before believed in something this massive. I truly believe that this is one of the biggest feats of cooperation that humans have ever accomplished. It takes people from every country all around the world every single day showing up to support this mission to make it happen. And really, we just get to be, we had the privilege of getting to be here for a short period of that time. But if we think back to 40 years ago when this idea was conceived and the international partnerships started to come together, the atmosphere and the climate politically was very similar to what it is now. There's a lot of people that would say that's not going to be possible. But all it took was visionaries from all around the world to work together to have a mustard seed of faith that something like this could be done when we work together. Crew 10 has had the absolute privilege of working here for the last 4 months, and we have so much gratitude for all of the ground teams that showed up every day to make this possible. We truly are very humbled to represent humanity, and we hope that we can be a reminder to others of the goodness of humanity and what we really can accomplish when we work together.
Once again, those words from Dragon Commander Anne McClain of NASA this past Tuesday during farewell remarks at the beginning of a change of command ceremony. So as we fast forward now, the 4 crew members who are departing the station, McClain, Nicole Ayers, Takoya Onishi, and Kirill Peskov, are aboard Dragon, preparing to configure the systems on their spacecraft before they close the hatch and begin suiting up into their launch and entry suits. Once the hatch is closed, there will be leak checks on both sides of the docking interface that you see there from external camera views on the station. Those leak checks will ensure that we have an airtight seal before we begin to depressurize the small passageway or vestibule that connects Dragon to the forward port of the Harmony module through that pressurized mating adapter on the right side of your screen. Once the vestibule is depressurized and the pressure is equalized on both sides of the docking interface, that will set the stage for the undocking command to be issued by SpaceX flight controllers in Hawthorne, California. That's scheduled 1 hour 57 minutes from now, 5 minutes after that command is issued, and with all 12 hooks holding Endurance to the International Space Station opened. The first undocking burn of about 1.5 seconds in duration will be issued, and that basically breaks the interface between Endurance and the station and marks the official undocking of the vehicle from the orbital outpost. The International Space Station is currently traveling in an orbit 262 miles above the Earth, moving from northwest to southeast across the Atlantic Ocean east of the continent of South America, about to enter an orbital sunset. The station, of course, orbits every 90 minutes in an inclination of 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. We now have received confirmation that the hatch on Endurance is closed, so we'll mark that at 3:04 p.m. Central Time, 4:04 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, the hatch closed to the Dragon Endurance.
SpaceX Dragon TTRV ISO valve confirmed visually open.
SpaceX copies on the big loop.
And this view inside the Dragon Endurance, with the hatch to the International Space Station's Harmony module having been closed through pressurized mating adapter number 2. You're looking at crew members who are configuring systems prior to completion of their suit-up procedures that will lead to their undocking at 5:05 p.m. Central Time, 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, this is a 17.5-hour transit away from the station to a splashdown site off the coast of California
on Saturday morning. The deorbit burn on Saturday morning at 9:39 a.m. Central Time, 10:39 a.m. Eastern Time
will be a 17.5-minute retrograde firing to slow Endurance down by 115 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. About 18 minutes after the deorbit burn, there will be the claw separation that basically holds the trunk in place, followed by the trunk of Dragon, the lower portion of Dragon. That will separate at
9:58 a.m. Central Time, 10:58 a.m. Eastern Time, before Endurance is maneuvered into the proper orientation for entry with the heat shield facing in the direction of travel to ablate or repel heat that will build up around the spacecraft to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
There will be a brief period of loss of signal because of the ionization of molecules around the spacecraft itself. Once we come AOS, or the acquisition of signal following that period of ionization, we'll be set for the deployment of the drogue chutes on Endurance, followed a short time later by the main chute deployment. Splashdown is scheduled at 10:33 and 47 seconds a.m. Central Time, 11:33 and 47 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. That will be 8:33 a.m. off the coast of California. Again, splashdown scheduled on Saturday morning.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Control of cabin air temperature via 4.080 is allowed until pre-chill. Note that the hex is currently configured for maximum cooling.
Is 4.080.
And the view inside Dragon, you're looking at the crew members who are completing their suit-up procedures. On the very right side of your screen is Takoyo Nishi and Kirill Peskov. Already in their seats, Nicole Ayers and the Dragon commander, Anne McLean. The undocking and departure profile off the forward port of the International Space Station's Harmony module will carry Dragon to a distance of about 400 meters in front of the station, and then a similar distance above the station and behind the station as the departure burns carry Dragon into a trajectory that will result in it phasing away from the International Space Station over the course of about 17 hours prior to the deorbit burn that will ultimately bring Endurance home. Once again, the mission will wrap up tomorrow morning, with Crew 10 having spent 148 days in space, 146 of them aboard the station, a journey of 2,368 orbits spanning 62.7 million miles. During their mission, the 4 crew members of Crew 10 conducted a multitude of scientific experiments, and Dan McLean and Nicole Ayers conducted 1 spacewalk totaling 5 hours and 44 minutes in duration. This will be the 4th time that a Dragon will have splashed down off the coast of California. The FRAM-2 mission, the commercial resupply uncrewed CRS-32 mission, and most recently the Axiom-4 mission, all concluded with splashdowns off the coast of California, but this will be the first time that a Dragon involved in the commercial crew program will have returned to Earth with a splashdown off the coast of California. And in the near field of view, Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov completing his suit up and his strap in to his seat. If you're just joining us, the hatch to the Dragon Endurance, that is the vehicle bringing home the Crew 10 quartet, was closed at 3:04 p.m. Central Time, 4:04 p.m. Eastern Time. You're seeing the crew members completing their suit-up procedures. There will be leak checks on both sides of the docking interface between Endurance and the forward port of the Harmony module of the International Space Station through pressurized mating adapter number 2. Once those leak checks are complete, the small passageway at the docking interface will be depressurized to vacuum. That will set the stage for the undocking command to be issued 1 hour and 46 minutes from now. That will come right on the dot at 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, initiating a 5-minute procedure to retract the umbilical between Dragon and the International Space Station, that umbilical having provided power and telemetry to Dragon during the course of its almost 5 months of docked operations. 2 sets of hooks, 6 hooks per set, will then be opened. Set 1 first, followed about 2 minutes later by set 2. And then the first of the undocking burns, a quick burst of the Draco thrusters on Dragon for about 1.5 seconds will be initiated at 5:05 p.m. Central Time, 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time, to initiate the actual physical separation of Dragon from the International Space Station. recently arrived at the station, consisting of Zena Cardman, Mike Fink, Kimia Yui, and Oleg Platonov, are in their 8th day in space. And on the left side of your screen, you're looking at the back of Mike Fink, veteran NASA astronaut, now in his 4th flight into space, as he and his crewmates are doing seal inspections on the forward hatch to the Harmony module that will be closed a short time from now, initiating the beginning of the equalization of pressure and the ultimate depressurization of that vestibule, very short passageway between Dragon and the International Space Station.
Dragon Houston on 2.
Dragon, go ahead.
Stand by for Big Loop RF audio config. And we expect this to cause approximately a 2-minute dropout in audio with MCC.
See a 2-minute dropout, and for everyone's awareness, we are starting section 5 of 4.010. All 4 crew members are seated, and strapped in.
That conversation referencing the Big Loop, that is the interconnected communications channel that ties the space-to-ground loop aboard the International Space Station with the communication system aboard Dragon, and which will remain in play until Dragon departs the so-called approach ellipsoid, which is basically a racetrack boundary outside of which the integrated operations between Mission Control here in Houston and the SpaceX Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California is conducted. Once Dragon departs the approach ellipsoid, the work is essentially done for Mission Control here in Houston for the joint phase of this mission, and SpaceX Mission Control will take over full operations of Dragon's departure. It's back away and phasing away from the International Space Station all the way through splashdown on Saturday morning off the coast of California. The space station is currently flying 262 miles south of the continent of Africa, about to begin a southwest to northeasterly trek that will carry it across the east coast of Australia and back across the North Pacific. And as you can see on the left side of your screen, the hatch is now closed on the station side of the docking interface. As Zena Cardman cleans up some of the equipment prior to the start of the leak checks that will be conducted between Dragon and the International Space Station to ensure that we have a tight seal before the depressurization of the passageway that will be the precursor to the undocking of Endurance from the station, physical separation scheduled at 5:05 p.m. Central, 6:05 p.m. Eastern Time.
Dragon, we are complete with...
Okay, SpaceX has you loud and clear on the big loop.
Complete with suit donning. We are at 4.011, looking for your go on 1.1.
Dragon, you are go to begin suit leak check procedure 4.011.
And McLean talking to both the Capcom here in Houston and the core, or SpaceX Capcom in Hawthorne, California, if you will. The procedures that they're relaying back and forth now have reached the point of leak checks on their suits to ensure that they have a tight seal on all 4 suits for the departing crew members.
Stand by for your go to close the APAS hatch.
And Johnny, before we give you that go, we'd like to confirm that you saw no damage or debris in your inspection in 5.2.
Confirm, no damage or debris, clean seals in step 5.2.
You are go for step 5.3.
Work.
NASA's Johnny Kim talking to Tess Caswell, the Capcom here in Houston, as they are about to complete the series of hatch closure procedures, this being the final hatch between the pressurized mating adapter and Harmony itself, that will set the stage for not only the suit leak checks for the 4 Dragon Endurance crew members, but also set the stage for the depressurization of the vestibule connecting Dragon to the International Space Station. We want that vestibule to be depressurized down to vacuum with readings that are equivalent on both sides of the docking interface before we move into the undocking command later this afternoon that will set in motion the physical separation of Endurance from the complex and begin the journey home for the 4 crew members comprising Crew 10, Anne McLean, Nicole Ayers, Takoya Onishi, and Kirill Peskov.
station on the big loop just to close this out. So the no-2 forward hatch is closed, verify the MPEV is closed, and SSC 17 for the closeout photos.
Copy, SSC 17 for the photos. And Station Houston on the big loop, one more question for the hatch.
Just with you.
Did you observe any noises while you were cycling the hatch this time, similar or different from previous?
So the first two attempts got the loud kind of grindy noises with the indicator about halfway through its travel, and that was in family with what I remember the last time I did this about a month or two ago. This most recent attempt, there was very little noise, which is also in family with what I remember about a month ago, is that the more times we cycled it, the less noisy and resistant it was.
Copy, Johnny. Thanks.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Vestibule leak check completed successfully.
SpaceX, Dragon on the big loop. We copy. Thank you.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for undock time.
Dragon SpaceX, go ahead.
All right, and there are some really awesome new high-definition cameras on the ISS, and we've got the most amazing view of a Dragon during undock that we've ever seen before. We are going to delay the undock sequence by 10 minutes, so we exit the eclipse period and we can capture this video.
Dragon copies. We'll make sure we smile.
With that, the new undock time is 22:10 Zulu.
Okay, 22:10, thanks.
August 8th, and we're joining you today from SpaceX in Hawthorne, California. We're following along with the Dragon Endurance spacecraft as we await Crew 10's departure from the International Space Station. Right now, we're expecting that process to begin shortly after 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm Ronnie Foreman, a senior sales manager here at SpaceX.
And I'm Anna Schneider with NASA Communications. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here, Anna. And of course, thank you for everyone tuning in to watch us live with our coverage today of Dragon completing its 10th crew rotation mission to the space station through NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Crew 11 arrived on station on Saturday, August 2nd at 2:27 a.m. Eastern, and they will be taking over for Crew 10, who are now headed home.
That's right, Ronnie. Crew 11 launched just last week on Friday, August 1st at 8:43 a.m. Pacific, 11:43 a.m. Eastern from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, with NASA astronauts Commander Zena Cardman and pilot Mike Fink, JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut and mission specialist Kamiya Yui, along with Roscosmos cosmonaut and mission specialist Oleg Platonov. The crew has since spent a few days in space, with those days docked to the space station being a handover period where they learn to live and work on station from the departing crew. Now, the returning Crew 10 members today are NASA astronauts Anne McClain and Nicole Ayers, along with JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov.
Right now, the crew is currently suited inside Dragon, and both the Dragon and station hatches are sealed in preparation for departure. Once Dragon departs the station, the crew's flight home is expected to last around 17.5 hours. Shortly after separation, Dragon will use its Draco thrusters to carefully move away from the station and complete a phasing burn that will prepare it to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. Following phasing, Dragon will complete deorbit, re-entry, and splashdown. During our deorbit sequence, several events will occur, including trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and finally, splashdown. And of course, like all of our mission with Crew 10 so far, Mission Control, SpaceX, and of course on the big loop connected to Houston, we'll be monitoring their progress all the way. You've got a great view of Mission Control at SpaceX here, but we'll hear call-outs from Mission Control in Houston here shortly. And of course, Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of California tomorrow, August 9th, at 8:33 a.m. Pacific, 11:33 a.m. Eastern, where it will be picked up by a SpaceX recovery vessel, and our recovery teams will help to egress or exit the crew from Dragon.
Now, currently on board the space station is the Expedition 73 crew, led by the current space station commander, Sergei Ryzhikov of Roscosmos. Just a few days ago, JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi handed over command of the space station to Ryzhikov ahead of his departure today, alongside his Crew 10 crewmates. Now, also on board space station is NASA astronaut Johnny Kim, as well as Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Zubritsky, and of course the recently arrived Crew 11 astronauts. Now, just like its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board. NASA astronaut Johnny Kim has helped the crew members prepare for today's departure and will be watching from the cupola, but the prime departure monitoring role falls on Anne McClain from inside Dragon. Mission Control in both Houston and Hawthorne will back them up as we step through today's undocking. And speaking of Mission Control in Houston, let's check in with NASA Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius at the Johnson Space Center in Houston to talk a bit about how the station crew have been preparing to send today's crew home and what we can expect from here until Dragon departs from station. Rob?
Thanks very much, Anna. Here in Mission Control in Houston, the team on console is led by Flight Director Allison Bollinger. She's joined by spacecraft communicator Tess Caswell, who will be talking directly to the crew through that big loop you described, all the way through the exit from the so-called approach ellipsoid, which is the racetrack boundary, after which joint operations will conclude between Houston and your Mission Control there in Hawthorne, California. A short time ago, Bollinger polled her team of flight controllers here and received a go for undocking. Now, the undocking time has been adjusted ever so slightly by just a few minutes to the right. The undocking command that will initiate the retraction of the umbilical between Dragon and the station that has been providing telemetry and electricity to the Dragon Endurance will be retracted. That will then initiate the opening of 2 sets of hooks, 6 hooks per set, that will physically separate Dragon from the International Space Station and conclude its 5-month stay on board the orbital outpost. Once that separation occurs, and it is now targeted, by the way, for 5:15 p.m. Central Time, 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time, that would mark physical separation. Dragon will move away from the forward port of Harmony to a point about 400 meters in front of the station. Then, through a series of departure burns, will move to a point above the station, behind the station, and then will phase away below the station for a 17.5-hour transit to its deorbit burn and splashdown off the coast of California on Saturday morning, as you described. The crew statistics for Crew 10, very impressive. They will have spent 148 days in space at the time of their splashdown on Saturday morning, 146 days of which were locked in and working with the Expedition 73 crew aboard the International Space Station. McLean, Ayres, Peskov, and Onishi will have completed 2,368 orbits of the Earth, a mission spanning 62.7 million miles. And McLean will have totaled 352 days in space during her 2 missions when she returns to Earth on Saturday. Ayres and Peskov, both first-time flyers, will have accrued 148 days, and Takuya Onishi, completing his 2nd flight into space, will have totaled 263 days on his 2 missions. So everything is all set for the departure of Crew 10 from the station. By the way, the delay, the wave-offs, if you will, because of weather over the past couple of days, concluded with a weather briefing this morning, and SpaceX and NASA were both go for undocking with the conditions, lighter winds, and even though there are some low clouds expected at the time of final descent for Endurance to its splashdown point off the coast of California, those conditions are well within limits to allow the undocking today and the return to Earth tomorrow for Crew 10. With that, we'll hand it back to Ronnie and Anna in Hawthorne and stand by for physical separation.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you for those updates. Of course, the team will continue to watch and monitor the weather all the way through splashdown and as they make their way through those phasing burns and onto deorbit tomorrow morning. And we heard just a minute ago that the teams were doing their final go, no-go poll. Again, they do all of these checkpoints and sequence all the way up through undocking to make sure all the teams are ready to go. And should for any point they have to wave off last minute for weather or whatever it may be, there's of course opportunities down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And because it does take us time to get back from the International Space Station to our splashdown location, we're monitoring weather not just at the time of separation, but trying to do that forecast ahead to make sure that we're going to have an easy splashdown for our crew, who are coming back from, almost 150 days in space. I want to make sure it's a warm welcome back here in California.
Yeah. And now let's take a moment to go ahead and meet the crew that we're bringing home today before they depart the International Space Station. So first up, we have NASA astronaut Anne McLean, who is your Crew 10 commander. Born and raised in Spokane, Washington, NASA selected McLean as an astronaut candidate in 2013. Crew 10 is her 2nd space flight after launching aboard the Soyuz MS-11 in 2018 and serving as a flight engineer on the International Space Station for expeditions 58 and 59. At the conclusion of this mission, as Rob mentioned, she will have spent 352 total days in space across her 2 missions, completing a total of 3 spacewalks for 18 hours and 52 minutes outside the orbiting laboratory. McLean is a West Point graduate and a colonel in the U.S. Army. She's a highly decorated Master Army aviator and has more than 2,000 flight hours in 20 different aircraft. McLean is also an avid rugby player and a former member of the USA Rugby Women's National Team, and she currently lives in Houston, Texas.
The pilot for Crew 10 is NASA astronaut Nicole Ayres. Crew 10 is her first space flight, a major in the U.S. Air Force and the first member of NASA's 2021 astronaut class named to a crew. Following this mission, Ayres will have logged 148 days in space, completing 1 spacewalk for a total of 5 hours and 44 minutes outside the space station. Ayres is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop. Final reconfigurations for undock are complete and nominal. Ground is go for undocking. Undock sequence start time is 22:10.
SpaceX starting. Copy. Goes up. Crew has visors down.
SpaceX copies. Visors down.
We heard a little bit of chatter there between mission control here in SpaceX communicating with our crew on board. And we've got confirmation that visors are down. What we're doing right now is getting the crew into their fully suited up, ready to depart configuration, because we want to make sure that for all of these dynamic phases of flight, we have them safely inside their spacesuits. So with that, let's take it back to our crew. We were just discussing mission pilot Nicole Ayers, who is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She has served as an instructor pilot and mission commander in the T-38 Adair and F-22 Raptor, leading multinational and multi-service missions worldwide. She has more than 1,400 total flight hours, including more than 200 hours in combat. Ayers has a twin and was born in San Diego, California.
And this is also the second mission to the space station for JAXA, or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, astronaut Takuya Onishi, after launching aboard the Soyuz MS-01 mission in 2016 and spending 113 days in space as a flight engineer for expeditions 48 and 49. Following Crew 10, Onishi will have logged a total of 263 days in space. Onishi received a Bachelor of Engineering in Aeronautical and Space Engineering from the University of Tokyo and soon embarked on a career in aviation with All Nippon Airways in Tokyo. He was selected as an astronaut candidate by JAXA in 2009, and during his stay on the space station, he became the first Japanese astronaut to capture the Cygnus spacecraft in space. Now, when he's not training, Onishi enjoys flying, playing the saxophone, movies, and hiking.
And rounding out our crew, this is mission specialist and Roscosmos cosmonaut Kirill Peskov. Like Ayers, the Crew 10 mission is also his first trip to the International Space Station. After the conclusion of this mission, he will have spent 148 days in space. Before his selection as a cosmonaut in 2018, he was a co-pilot on the Boeing 757 and 767 aircraft for airlines Nordwind and ECAR. Assigned as a test cosmonaut in 2020, he has additional experience in skydiving, zero-gravity training, scuba diving, and wilderness survival.
And it's a great crew that we are bringing home. Of course, now on your screen, you can actually see a look inside Dragon that's looking over the shoulders of the pilots and commanders. So Nicole Ayers and Anne McLean there in the center. They're all suited up and getting ready for today's departure. Again, we're just over about 10 minutes away from the undock command, and once that undock command is sent, it takes about 5 minutes to then have that physical separation from station, which will then mark the conclusion of their stay aboard the International Space Station as they make their way home to Earth. And just a few minutes ago, when we were introducing you to the crew, we heard some of those comms. Again, those comms were on what is known as the big loop. So that's that integrated communications loop that includes the team here in Mission Control in Hawthorne, as well as the Mission Control team in Houston, along with the space station crew with Expedition 73 aboard and the Dragon crew, Crew 10, who is departing today. It basically allows all of those teams to be working in tandem and talking on one integrated communications loop. So throughout today's departure activities, that is where we will be hearing those communications between the ground and the station and crew aboard. And right now, the International Space Station and Dragon are orbiting about 260 statute miles above Earth, crossing the southern Indian Ocean. And we also did just hear a few minutes ago that the teams had pulled go to proceed with today's undocking and departure activities. So again, we are just standing by for that undocking command here in just about 10 minutes.
So again, right now, if you are just joining us, we are standing by for Crew 10's departure from the International Space Station. And the view on your screen right now is looking over the shoulder of the pilot and commander for today's mission, up at the 3 touchscreen displays inside the Dragon spacecraft. Our crew is going to use these touchscreens to monitor their progress as they move away from station, even though the maneuver itself is fully autonomous.
And as we mentioned a few minutes ago, the Joint Flight Control teams did pull go to proceed with today's undocking and departure. And now that the Joint Flight Control teams are go for undock, we are just awaiting that undock sequence to actually begin. Again, the undock command is scheduled to be sent in about 9 minutes at 3:10 p.m. Pacific, 6:10 p.m. Eastern. Once that command is sent, it will take less than 5 minutes for Dragon to separate from the International Space Station, which has been its home for the last 5 months.
At the planned undock time, SpaceX Mission Control will command the undock sequence start, which begins the automatic undocking process we were just talking about. The first step is for the umbilicals to retract. These umbilicals connect Dragon systems to the space station while docked, transferring power, telemetry, and commands between the two vehicles throughout Dragon's stay. Once that's complete, Dragon will unlatch itself from the space station by releasing the 12 hard capture hooks in 2 separate phases, which Rob was telling us about while he was with us a couple minutes ago. All that combined takes roughly 4.5 minutes. And then Dragon will be ready to depart from station and begin to move itself further and further away using the Draco thrusters on board.
And Dragon's initial departure from station is a little bit different from other docked vehicles like the Soyuz that rely on springs to push them away from the docking port. Dragon will actually execute 2 short thruster firings called undock burns, and that is what physically separates Dragon from the International Space Station. Those thruster firings use a combination of the 12 Draco engines around the base of the spacecraft, with the first breaking any stiction between Dragon and the docking port, and then the second slowly backing the spacecraft away from the station's Harmony module. And again, Dragon is currently docked to the forward-facing port on the Harmony module. Crew 11 docked last Saturday to the space-facing port. And following that physical separation, which we are expecting at about 3:15 p.m. Pacific, 6:15 p.m. Eastern, we will have Depart Burn 0, which is the first of 4 departure burns to begin moving Dragon further away from the space station. That initial departure burn, Depart Burn 0, will then be followed by the second departure burn about 5 minutes later, and that will help move the spacecraft beyond the keep-out sphere. The keep-out sphere is an invisible 200-meter line centered on the space station, and it is one of several safety zones set up to govern spacecraft arriving and departing from the International Space Station. Before moving into the keep-out sphere, spacecraft have to be configured where they would not cross the imaginary boundary for at least 4 orbits, even if the spacecraft lost all maneuvering. And then after that, about 13 minutes later, today that would be around 3:34 p.m. Pacific, 6:34 p.m. Eastern, Dragon will then exit what is known as the approach ellipsoid. Again, it's another imaginary shape, this time a 3-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep-out sphere. One of the key differences with the approach ellipsoid is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory, which means the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours, even if it lost all maneuvering. Again, we're expecting the call for the undocking sequence to begin in about 6 minutes. And then after that happens, it'll be about 5 more minutes before we have physical separation of Dragon carrying Crew 10 away from the International Space Station to conclude their mission.
Just had a shot a second there of our crew on board working through some final checklists,
preparing for that undocking sequence start. And all throughout today, there have been a lot of procedures that they've had to work through. Before we started today's broadcast, the crew had to work through hatch close procedures, and then they got suited up and completed some leak checks. They also depressurized the vestibule, which is the area in between the Dragon hatch and the space station hatch, which prior to Crew 10's docking back in March would have been exposed to the vacuum of space. Now, of course, after they undock today, that area will then be re-exposed to that vacuum of space. And during their mission, they conducted quite a bit of science. They contributed to more than 200 different microgravity science and research experiments during their time aboard the International Space Station.
And the International Space Station will actually mark a very important milestone this year. It'll be the 25th year of continuous human presence aboard the orbiting laboratory. And during that time, over 4,000 different experiments have been conducted in that unique environment.
I'm always struck by when we do these webcasts talking about the expedition numbers of our crew, how many different astronauts have been on board station. And of course, today is the completion of the 10th crew rotational mission as part of the Commercial Crew program. And of course, our 10th Crew Dragon mission to the International Space Station as well. For those of you just joining us or have not watched an undocking before, in the lower left-hand corner of your screen now, you have the range and rate available so that you can help monitor along from home, just like we're monitoring here from Mission Control. The range tells you about how far away from the station we are, and the rate is the speed at which that distance is changing.
So we're looking for both to increase as we move through these carefully planned maneuvers as we go through our separation, phasing burns, and ultimately head towards splashdown. And what's really interesting about undockings and dockings is that both vehicles are actually traveling at about 17,000 miles per hour. So if you think about it, the relative rate seems small and it seems like they're going so slow when you're watching it on TV, but it's really, they're going very fast, and they orbit about 260 statute miles above Earth. So as Dragon makes its way back to Earth, it of course has to lower down so that it can re-enter Earth's atmosphere, again targeting that splashdown early tomorrow morning around 8:33 a.m. Pacific. And we're now just about 3 minutes away from that undock command, which will be sent to Dragon from the ground, and that will then command the umbilicals to retract, and those umbilicals provide power between Dragon and the space station, and those were initially attached when Dragon docked to the International Space Station back in March. So then after the umbilicals retract, then we will have those hooks begin to drive open, and that will happen in 2 sets of 6. And then once that happens, Dragon will conduct those 2 short thruster firings to physically separate it from station.
And as you mentioned, this is the same Dragon that docked with Crew 10 back in March. Part of our operating procedure is such that the Dragon spacecraft that launches the astronauts is exactly the same one that brings them back home. So while our Crew 10 astronauts have been aboard the International Space Station, Dragon has been docked to the ISS as well. And we're using them in that docked configuration, effectively as one vehicle. Their spacesuits are stored inside of Dragon, as are some of those experiments that you were talking about.
And of course, they had to repack some of those scientific experiments to make their way back to Earth. Again, we're about 1 minute away from that undock command. So as we continue to stand by, let's go ahead and check back in with Rob Navius at NASA's Mission Control in Houston.
Thanks very much, you guys out in Hawthorne. Here in Mission Control in Houston, all flight controllers are set for the beginning of the end of the Crew 10 mission and the journey home. That will span about 17.5 hours from the time of physical separation to the time of tomorrow's splashdown off the coast of California. We're about 20 seconds away from the issuance of the undocking command from Hawthorne. We'll stand by for confirmation of that. All of Dragon Endurance's systems are in excellent shape, as are the systems aboard the International Space Station, as we stand by about 10 seconds from now for the issuance of that undocking command. And execution of the command now has been issued. The first step on the road to separation will be the retraction of the umbilical that you just heard a moment ago. And McLean, the commander of Endurance, acknowledging the issuance of the undocking command, the umbilical being retracted. Once again, this means that Endurance will be on its own in terms of internal power and telemetry, no longer interconnected to the International Space Station.
Umbilical demate complete and nominal.
And the first set of hooks now traveling. 2 gangs of hooks, 6 hooks apiece, will open in sequential fashion. Hook set number 1 followed quickly by hook set number 2. And then the next step will be that 1.5 second pulse of the Draco thrusters, the undocking burn, that will create the physical separation between Dragon and the International Space Station. The Expedition 73 crew, who will be left on board the station to continue the unbroken presence of humans on board the orbital outpost led by Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Ryzhikov. He's the new ISS commander, joined by Alexei Zabritsky, Oleg Platonov, Johnny Kim, Zena Cardman, Mike Fink, and Kimia Yui. It takes about 5 minutes from the issuance of the undocking command until physical separation, so we'll be standing by to annotate the exact time and location over the Earth at the point of physical separation that will begin the trip home for Dragon Endurance. Currently in an orbital nighttime pass. We should be moving into a daylight pass over the southwestern Pacific Ocean a short time from now. The International Space Station traveling from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. And the first set of hooks now open, now working on the second set.
First set of hooks, open and nominal.
Second set of hooks now driving. All quiet here in the mission control room here in Houston, the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Once the undocking is complete and Endurance is outside of the approach ellipsoid, which will end joint operations between us and the SpaceX team in Hawthorne, the Expedition 73 crew will move into a pre-sleep period and a lengthy sleep period overnight and an off-duty day tomorrow. The second set of hooks now open, standing by for undock burn number 1. Dragon and the International Space Station flying into an orbital sunrise. All hooks confirmed to be open.
All hooks now open and nominal. Dragon separation.
And we have undocking. Physical separation confirmed at 5:15 p.m. Central Time, 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time, as the station and Dragon flew 260 miles over Jakarta, Indonesia. And undock burn number 2 has been completed. And depart 0 burn now underway. You can see those Draco thrusters doing their thing, opening up an increasingly quicker separation rate between Dragon and the station. Depart 0 burn complete.
Depart burn 0 complete. Performance nominal.
Visiting vehicle officer here reports good trajectory as Dragon Endurance leaves the International Space Station from which it docked 146 days ago. We're about 4 minutes away from depart burn number 1. That'll be a 22-second firing of the Draco thrusters to increase the acceleration of Endurance away from the International Outpost. Again, physical separation, undocking occurring at 5:15 p.m. Central, 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time, as Dragon and the station flew 260 miles over Jakarta, Indonesia. And again, we will remain in integrated operations with Hawthorne, California and SpaceX Mission Control until the time that Endurance has exited the approach ellipsoid, which is that 2 by 2 by 4 kilometer invisible boundary, basically a racetrack shaped oval type boundary that represents the vicinity of the neighborhood of the International Space Station within which integrated operations are conducted. Anne McLean, Nicole Ayers, Takoya Onishi, and Kirill Peskov beginning the journey home that will culminate with their parachute-assisted splashdown off the coast of California Saturday morning. The track of Dragon and the station will carry it a moment from now across Malaysia and then just south of Manila, the capital of the Philippines. Everything has gone by the book. All of the pre-departure preparations went per the timeline. The undocking was deliberately pushed back a few minutes to gain better visibility, communications, and camera views of Dragon as it departed the International Space Station. We still are headed for a splashdown on Saturday morning at 10:33 a.m. Central Time, 8:33 a.m. Pacific Time off the coast of California. This will be the 4th time that SpaceX will have executed a splashdown and recovery off the coast of California, following in the footsteps of Fram-2, the 32nd commercial resupply mission, a cargo Dragon, and then most recently Axiom 4, but this will be the first time that a California splashdown will have been executed as part of the Commercial Crew program. We're about 25 seconds away from departure burn number 1. This is a 22-second firing with a delta velocity change of 0.6 of a meter per second to further increase Endurance's opening rate from the International Space Station. That will be followed seconds later by its exit from the keep-out sphere, the first of these 2 boundaries within which integrated operations are occurring, and depart burn 1 underway.
Depart burn 1 complete. You are go to doff suits per procedure 4.012. Reminder, ground will be deactivating the big loop following exit from the approach ellipsoid.
Dragon now maneuvering.
Crew 10 copies, go to doff suits. To the ISS Crew, Expedition 73 Bravo. It was an absolute privilege to cross paths with you. Good luck in the rest of the mission. Godspeed.
Anne, Vapor, Talk, and Kirill, thank you for your wishes. We wish you fair winds and following seas. It's been an honor for all of us around the world to support you as you lived and worked on the International Space Station. We cannot wait to welcome you home to the blue skies of Earth.
Endurance Commander Anne McLean exchanging words with
station on a big loop. Fair winds and following seas. It was a huge honor to work with you all. We're going to miss you, and we can't wait to see you back on Earth.
Likewise, Johnny and the rest of the crew, have a great mission.
Again, Endurance Commander Anne McLean wishing all the best and a big vote of thanks.
Dragon and Station, Houston on the big loop. Dragon has exited the keep out sphere.
And as you heard, Endurance is now outside of the keep out sphere. The next milestone will be coming up about 11 minutes from now, and that will be the approach ellipsoid exit to conclude joint integrated operations. And you heard those words from spacecraft communicator Tess Caswell here in Mission Control, as well as NASA astronaut Johnny Kim, who remains on board the station until early December as part of the Expedition 73 crew. So with Endurance well on the way on the first leg of its journey home that will culminate with its splashdown off the coast of California Saturday morning, we're about to conclude joint integrated operations with Hawthorne here in Mission Control in Houston. And so with that, we will